Today's scripture reading can be found in the New Testament on page 78. We're hearing Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32, the parable of the prodigal and his brother. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided the property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to the citizens of that country, who sent him to his own fields to feed the pigs. He would have gladly filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have enough bread and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But when he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. He answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost, and he has been found.'"
So we're talking today about inheritances. Inheritances. Did any of you ever inherit anything of real import to you? Did a grandmother or grandfather, an aunt or an uncle, perhaps your parents, did they leave something to you, entrust something to your care and keeping? Anybody think of anything they've inherited? Anybody? Your mother and father's Bibles, truly a treasure. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Julius.
Kind of like material things. My dad's mom, my dad told me as I got older, she was the one to buy me my first like baseball glove. So I still have that as a keepsake.
Mm,
I still have my nana's nightstand that she had in her bedroom.
mm,
My grandpa used to have it.
mm.
So I have those as like keepsakes.
Yeah, a precious piece of furniture, a remembrance and a heirloom of something that Grandma gave you, in a baseball glove that you hold on to. Yeah. Anybody else? Pardon me? Jewelry, beautiful jewelry. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, Marilyn. A dinnerware set. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
I have a chair in my family room that I let my mother borrow
Uh-huh.
for many years, and she died, she made sure that I got it back.
That it came back to you. Yeah, a precious chair that was loaned that her mama used for a long time, and then when she passed, it was given back to her. That's a treasure. Yeah.
My father's love of music.
Your father's love of music. Yeah, that is truly an inheritance. Yeah. I know when my mom passed, I was not married then. There was no hope in sight that I would ever be married. Truthfully, I was in my very early 30s, and my mother gave to me her precious, precious china that had been given to them, my mother and father, at their wedding, and had only been used for special occasions. And I've treasured it, and I keep it safe. And you know, I'm living in the 20th home of my adult life, but always that has traveled with me and in safekeeping. It's not ever been out of my sight for long, even though I've shipped my belongings across country. When I've driven, those have been in the car with me. I inherited my mother's wedding and engagement rings because, again, there was never any hope that I would be married and have them of my own. And as my mother was dying, my father said, you know, your sister lost her engagement ring. Would you give your mother's engagement ring to Giselle? And I said, absolutely. And she has cared beautifully for it all these years since. Yeah. What else? What else do we inherit? I inherited my father's work ethic. I inherited his love of sports. I inherited the golf clubs he carefully made for me, weighted and balanced when I was 7 years old. And I still have those baby blue woods. Yeah. I inherited a lot of other things. What did you inherit, Charlotte? Paintings that your father did. Yeah. Acts of love. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. The goodwill of not judging others. Yeah. Yeah. All of us kids inherited from our mother a deep sense of service to others. We have all ended up in the service fields. A deep love of justice. My mother worked for justice all the years while we were growing up. I inherited from them the value of a wonderful education. They had not been college students themselves. My mother went to college when my youngest sister was 12, and I inherited the idea of resiliency, and that you could start your life anew in new directions. So many things we inherit. We inherit some ugly things too. You know, we are a mixture of good and bad. You know, I inherited a little bit of my father's OCD, and you know, I inherited both of their liver and kidney disease. I inherited factor V Leiden. I inherited a lot of disease. I inherited a mixture of good and bad. Yeah, I inherited their perfectionism. That's a struggle, yeah. But we inherit a lot of things. How have you treated the things that you have inherited? Do you feel good about how you've treated them for the most part? Yeah, most of us do. But what if you didn't? What can you think of that might have happened to the things you've been given that you were careless about or really didn't give much thought to, and you're fortunate to still have them just by God's grace? Nothing bad happened to them. What do those inheritances mean to you today? What do those Bibles mean to you today? They're precious. She uses one of them every day. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I inherited the family pictures. They're treasures, just treasures. Yeah. I digitized them all and put them all on thumb drives and gave copies to all of my siblings and our relatives. Yeah, so I feel like I did a good thing with that inheritance, that I shared it in a way that's incorruptible, so to speak. Yeah. So we're talking about a gentleman who received an inheritance. In fact, he kind of demanded that inheritance before his father even passed. What did he do with the inheritance? Squandered it. Yeah. High living, wine, women, and song, went off to a foreign land thinking that this will last forever. This money will take me as long as I need it, right? How did that work out? Not too well. So he ended up just bereft of any possibility of being able to provide for himself, right? Squandered the inheritance that he had been given. So what did he do when he realized the error of his wrongs? What did he do? He went home. He went home. It says he came to. He came to. You ever have a moment in your life where you come to? He came to. Yeah. He came to. He came to himself first. That's the first thing, coming to ourselves, recognizing the error of our ways. And then he came to his father. And he had rehearsed what he wanted to say to his father. He had rehearsed it. Father, I have sinned against you. I have squandered what you've given me. I am so sorry. I am willing to beg to not even be your son again, to just be one of your hired hands. I just want to be treated like one of your hired hands. I don't care if I have to sleep in the bunkhouse. I don't care if I have to work hard all day just to get a meal. I'm willing to do anything. Have you ever had to make the kind of apology that you need to rehearse a bunch of times? I have recently, even in the last couple of weeks, had to make an apology to someone that I needed to rehearse because I needed to say everything that was on my mind, and they deserved to hear the depth of my regret and hear the depth of my request for forgiveness and for reconciliation. And so he's rehearsing it all the way home, rehearsing it. Father, I've sinned. Father, I've sinned. Father, I've sinned. Because he didn't have the confidence that in that moment, overwhelmed with the emotion, that he would be able to remember what he needed to say. I've been in situations like that. I mean, perhaps you have too. But what does it say happened to him as he was coming toward his father's house? While he was still far away, what does it say happened? His father saw him and ran to him. Now, have you ever been in a situation where you spotted somebody who had done you wrong a far ways off, and you saw them heading towards you? Did you run to them? You just let things lay where they are.
It's like, just because, I use this example for a particular situation, I'm not going to say what, just because those individuals put me through all that, I wish that on them.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, their own choices and all of that, that's what's going to do them nothing.
Yeah. Okay. I think if you are the type of person who runs to them to offer a hug, what has been their response? Shock. Yeah. I have been in that situation recently, within the last week. People that had harmed me were present, and I knew they would be present at a funeral that I was officiating for a friend of theirs. And just watching them in the back when the service was over, kind of huddled together, just the kind of the look of trepidation on their face as I was coming up the aisle. And I'm thinking, oh boy, they think I'm mad at them. And I wasn't. And the shock when I just reached the first one and just threw my arms around them. The shock. They don't know what to do with that. They don't know what to do with that. Because mostly, when we feel like we've wronged somebody, we are carrying guilt. When we have come to ourselves, the level of guilt and shame and regret and remorse is so heavy that we don't believe we deserve that hug. We know we don't deserve that hug. And that's what that young man was feeling. His father runs up to him and throws his arms around him, and he's thinking, I don't deserve this. He couldn't even get out the apology, couldn't even begin to beg his father to let him just be a hired hand. His father just threw his arms around him. Can you imagine what that would be like for the person that has harmed you? What that would do to their world if when you next see them, you just run toward them with open heart and mind and eyes, filled with love, and just threw your arms around them? How would that change your relationship? Do you think that would melt some ice between you? That's what the father did. It says he was filled with compassion. What does compassion mean? What's the definition? Where does it come from, the word compassion? It is to feel with. Come, feel. With. Passion, feel with, to suffer with. The father had been suffering about the son. But he wasn't suffering because of what the son had done to him. He was suffering because of what in his kingdom the son had kept himself from. He had missed out on all the riches of being in his father's household, of being in the midst of grace and goodness and love and provision. The father wasn't mad at him. The father had suffered because of his son's suffering. He had compassion for him. And that's how God treats us. When we come to ourselves and then come to God, God is not angry about what we have done. God has compassion. God has suffered with us because God has longed for us to experience the riches of God's kingdom, and we have kept ourselves from it. And God has compassion for that. There's a beautiful song written by Phillips, Craig, and Dean, a longtime contemporary Christian group. It's called Mercy Came Running. The chorus goes something like this: Mercy came running like a prisoner set free, past all of my failures to the point of my need, when the sin that I carried was all I could see. And when I could not reach mercy, mercy came running to me. And that's that message of the parable. That God suffers when we suffer. And that God is not angry about the choices that we make that keep us distant from God's kingdom. All he wants is for us to return to it, to accept the blessings and the grace and the goodness and the joy and the hope As soon as he returned, he rejoiced. He said, bring me a ring. And it would have been a signet ring, one that acknowledged the family, that he was back in the family. Bring me the finest of robes, probably something purple, the color of royalty. Let's have a feast. Let's celebrate. Let's eat. This son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Jesus is assuring us in the telling of this parable that in the midst of our guilt and shame and regret and remorse, that God's response when we turn around is to have a party. And no, we don't feel like we deserve it because we don't. And that's the definition of grace, the unmerited favor of a loving God. That's how God is with us. And so I wonder, what is the treasure that God has provided you? What is the inheritance that perhaps you have a sense you may be squandering? Is it money that perhaps you've misspent? Regret over the years, decisions you've made? Perhaps you've squandered it on material things, wasn't good at saving. Perhaps you've fallen into a habit over the years of spending money on things that aren't providing you life, that don't honor God. Perhaps you've squandered the gift of some opportunities, things you haven't taken advantage of because you were too afraid of the unknown, of change. It was more comfortable to stay in the familiar. Perhaps the inheritance is the gift of health that you haven't protected, but instead you've caused to decline, maybe over years of overeating or drinking or smoking or a lack of exercise. Maybe it's time. Maybe time is the inheritance, the treasure that you've been given, and you fear you aren't using it to accomplish many meaningful things. Do you fear that you've wasted too much time, that maybe you're even a bit lazy? I think in one way or another, we are each and all prodigal sons and daughters. And yet God longs to shower us with blessings. And every day we wake up and we get 24 fresh hours of time, opportunities, possibilities, a measure of health, some financial resources, differing abilities, intelligence, wisdom. And there is not one of us who uses those blessings perfectly in any given day. And we can be pretty hard on ourselves when we know we aren't acting in the ways we could. When we come to ourselves and begin to recognize our shortcomings, most of us will go to pretty great lengths to avoid looking at ourselves honestly. In fact, many of us, out of fear of looking at ourselves honestly, don't look at ourselves much at all. It's easier to look at others, to gossip, to criticize, rather than to turn the mirror on oneself. Many of us fear, consciously or unconsciously, that we are not truly good people, worthy of love and good things. Many of us fear that the things we have done are irredeemable, and worse, that God could never forgive us. But the parable reminds us that life is challenging every single day, and just facing whatever each day holds and doing the best that you're able to in that day is enough, and that you are worthy of love and grace. Paul wrote about that in his second letter to the Corinthians. He said, "From now on, we regard no one from a point of view that is human. Even though we once knew Christ from a human point of view, we know him no longer in that way. So if anyone is in Christ, there is a new creation. Everything old has passed away. Everything has become new." And so I want to encourage you this week to think about something in your life, an inheritance, a gift from God. Something that you feel you may be squandering or remember having squandered in the past that's related to a blessing that God has given you. And you feel badly about how you've used that gift in the past or how you might be using it today. Maybe it has to do with how you're spending your money or your time or how you're caring for your body or utilizing a gift or a talent that you have. And then I want you to take this week the opportunity to bring your real self, to come to, and to bring your real self to the real God and tell God what it is that you think you have squandered and how you think you've squandered it. And ask God to forgive you for that. And then I want you to believe and accept that God forgives you, has already forgiven you. And you can ask for help to let go of the guilt and shame and regret and remorse that you're carrying and that is not serving you well. Ask God to respond differently to that treasure that God provides you every morning when you wake up. A few weeks ago, we placed stones in different places in this sanctuary to remember opportunities where we've seen God in our lives acting. And today, I want to offer you an opportunity to place another stone, but I want you to place it on that altar at the foot of the cross as a sign of your desire and your commitment to do just that, to bring yourself to the foot of the cross this week and to drop the rock that you're carrying and accept God's forgiveness and believe that you are worthy of that love and that grace.